This happened in March of 2022 during spring break. I was in my second year of college, and 6 of us decided to rent a cabin in South Carolina for a few days, a getaway from school, stress, and everything that felt like responsibility. There were 4 of us guys, me, Matt, Chris, and Tyler, and 2 girls, Jess and Sarah. We had been close since freshman year, practically inseparable, and this trip was supposed to be fun, carefree, the kind of trip you laugh about later. The cabin we rented was advertised as being on private land near a lake, far from any towns, completely secluded. The photos online made it look charming. 2 stories, a wraparound porch, large windows, and rustic interiors. The owner's instructions were simple. Enjoy yourselves, but don't wander too far into the woods. Old wells, busted fences, snakes, you don't want to get turned around. At the time, I thought it was just a friendly warning, a little extra southern charm to make the place feel more atmospheric. We drove for hours. GPS failed an hour out, and the last stretch was narrow dirt roads, gravel barely wide enough for 1 car, trees pressing in from both sides. The silence around us felt heavy, almost unnatural. When we finally arrived, the cabin was off. Not in a scary way at first glance, but there was something about the stillness that made us pause. The shutters were crooked, windows dusty, and the smell of damp wood and old garbage hung faintly in the air. We joked about it, saying it added character, trying to lighten the mood. Inside, the cabin was bigger than we expected. 2 floors, a large living room, a small kitchen, and bedrooms upstairs. There were 2 bathrooms, a porch wrapping around the house, and massive windows that looked into the dark, dense forest surrounding the property. We unpacked our bags, claimed rooms, and started drinking by 7 p.m. The first night was fun. We grilled outside, played music, laughed until our throats hurt. But as darkness fell, I realized just how black the woods were. Not night black, but a kind of oppressive, almost tangible darkness. The porch lights barely illuminated a few feet in front of the house, and the forest seemed to press in from all sides. No bugs, no wind, just an eerie, heavy silence. By 2 a.m., we had crashed. I had a small room on the ground floor, window facing the woods. Around 4:15 a.m., I woke up suddenly. I don't know why, just wide awake, heart hammering. At first, I thought it was a nightmare, but then I heard it tap, tap, tap. It was soft, deliberate, rhythmic. Not metallic, not mechanical. Fingers tapping against glass. I froze. Slowly, I looked toward the window. There, pressed up against the glass, was a man. He was wild-looking, almost feral. Hair tangled, filthy clothes, or maybe none at all. His pale skin was illuminated faintly by the porch light, but his eyes were the worst. Wide, unblinking, completely fixed on me. His mouth hung slightly open, breathing silently, and in his hand he held a knife. Slowly, deliberately, he tapped it on the glass, like he was communicating some unspoken message. I felt my body lock up. This isn't real. This isn't real. But it was. I whispered Matt's name. He was sleeping on the couch outside my room. At first, he didn't respond, groggy from sleep. I repeated it, pointing toward the window. When he finally turned and saw the man, his reaction was immediate. He jumped up, knocking over the coffee table in surprise. The man was gone. We all got up, trembling. The girls were terrified. Tyler tried to convince us it was a drunk local, lost or messing with us. Chris suggested it could be a hunter who wandered too far. But I knew better. That man wasn't lost. He wasn't accidental. He was watching. We blocked the doors and windows, moved furniture in front of the big living room window, and took shifts staying awake for hours. Nothing else happened that night, but when morning came, we saw footprints. Human footprints. Bare, circling the cabin, stopping at every single window, even the little one above the upstairs shower. We should have left, but we didn't. We stayed. Night 2 began similarly. Drinks, music, a fire pit outside, jokes to mask the tension. But the atmosphere had changed. Everyone kept glancing nervously at the woods. Jess refused to drink. Chris kept a hunting knife on his belt. The unease was palpable, creeping into every conversation. Around 3:30 a.m., Matt went to the kitchen for water. He stopped, frozen, and called my name. I got up confused, and then I saw him. He was standing still, pointing. My heart sank. There in the kitchen was the man. Same wild hair, same pale, unblinking eyes, same knife. But now he was inside, naked. His back was covered in long, raw-looking scratches, his skin marked as if he had been clawed by some animal or worse. He swayed slowly, rocking on his feet, staring at the refrigerator as though it were some mystical object he could not understand. None of us spoke. We stood silently at the hallway entrance, gripping whatever we could as weapons. I had a pocket knife, Sarah had a fire poker, and Chris grabbed a chair leg. We flipped on the lights. Gone. The man had vanished. The back door was wide open, not broken, not forced, just open. We left 20 minutes later, packing only the essentials: wallets, phones, keys. We drove through the woods until we had enough cell signal to call the sheriff. At a diner off the highway, we met a deputy. He didn't look surprised. Yeah, he said casually, "We've had some trouble with folks squatting in those woods." We tried to explain it wasn't just some random homeless guy. He had watched us. He had been inside the cabin. He had returned 2 nights in a row. But the deputy simply nodded, as though he had heard this story countless times. When we mentioned the owner, his expression suggested he knew something unsaid. The rental listing disappeared a few days later, wiped from every site. We never got answers, never got our deposit back. And the man, I still see him. The wide, unblinking eyes, the smile, the deliberate tapping. Even now, when I wake in the middle of the night, I see him pressed against the window, staring at me, patient, silent, and unrelenting. That cabin, far from towns and roads, became a monument to the terror of isolation, a place where someone or something could study, wait, and strike. And even though we escaped, part of me knows the man didn't vanish. He's still out there, somewhere in those woods, waiting for the next people foolish enough to step into his territory. I don't talk about that trip much anymore, but sometimes when I close my eyes, I see his eyes, that smile, and I remember in that silent, oppressive forest just how small and vulnerable I really was. When I was 16, my parents and I moved from California to a secluded area in North Idaho. My parents had recently retired and built their dream home deep in the backcountry. There were no neighbors for miles, just dense forest that stretched endlessly into the distance, touching the edge of a national park and old logging grounds. From the outside, the house was a paradise. 2 stories, a full gym, a pool room, a bar, and even a basement movie theater setup. It felt like a dream, a place lifted straight out of a magazine. But I learned quickly that isolation can be both a blessing and a curse. At the time, I was dating my high school girlfriend, Lily. One evening, my parents went out for a rare date downtown, leaving me completely alone. I invited Lily over, planning a quiet night. Just us, a movie, maybe a beer. By the time she arrived, the sun had set and the dense forest surrounding the house swallowed the last light. I cracked open a beer, even though I was underage. We settled into the movie room in the basement and watched Gladiator. At first, everything was normal. The movie played, we laughed at the dialogue, teased each other during the dramatic scenes. But somewhere near the midpoint, I felt an overwhelming sense of unease. It was a creeping, primal instinct, a fight-or-flight response my brain couldn't explain. My eyes kept drifting toward the large windows at the back of the house, which overlooked the woods. The darkness outside was total. No moonlight, no stars, just an impenetrable wall of black trees. I told myself it was paranoia, that I was overthinking, but my gut screamed otherwise. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, watching us. When the movie ended, I walked Lily to her car, keeping my eyes on the shadowy perimeter of the forest the entire time. The house felt eerily silent as she drove away. I turned back toward the lights inside, thinking the night's terror had passed. Then I remembered the movie room lights, the pool room lights, and the bar lights. I had left them all on. I went downstairs to turn them off. First the movie room, then the bar, and then I froze. Through the massive window facing the backyard, I saw him. A man, standing just beyond the glass, less than a foot from the window, staring at me. His hair was wild, tangled and dirty. His clothes, if they could be called that, were filthy rags. But what made my stomach twist was his expression, a wide, unnatural grin, and eyes so wide and fixed that they seemed to pierce right through me. In his hand glinted a knife, tapping slowly against the glass in a rhythmic, deliberate manner. My first instinct was disbelief. Maybe I was hallucinating, I told myself. The air felt heavy, unnatural, as if the night itself had conspired to trap me. But no, it was real. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared. I backed away slowly, heart hammering against my ribs. I ran to the barroom and shut off the lights there. The sliding glass door also faced the woods, and as I watched, the man moved slowly from window to door, never breaking eye contact, never blinking. I could feel his gaze crawling along my spine. I didn't wait. I ran upstairs, locking the door behind me. My parents arrived moments later, alerted by a neighbor who had noticed lights in the house, or perhaps my earlier panic call. I wasn't entirely sure. My dad grabbed his rifle from the gun safe without a word, and my mom whispered, trembling, that there had been break-ins in the area recently, that the description I gave matched a man known to wander the woods, attempting to enter homes. The police were called, but no one was found. There were no footprints in the snow, no disturbed foliage, nothing to indicate he had ever been on the property. Yet every night afterward, I could hear it, a faint tapping, light at first, then growing louder over time. Sometimes it was on the roof, sometimes just beneath the second-floor windows. Always at night, always when I was alone. Winter arrived. My parents had to leave town briefly, and even with the house secured, I felt the same gnawing sense of dread. That night, the dog, our Rottweiler, which was normally calm and gentle, stood at the front door, growling low and ferociously, a sound I had never heard from him before. Heavy crunching footsteps on the snow outside accompanied a slow, deliberate knock. My heart raced as I realized he was back. I stayed in my room, shotgun at my side, dog at my feet, waiting until sunrise. When morning came, I walked outside to inspect the yard. Footprints. Fresh human footprints circling the house, stopping at every window, including the ones upstairs. Whoever had done this had been thorough, systematic, as if studying the layout of the house, cataloging my movements. I followed the prints into the forest. They twisted and turned, doubled back on themselves, and eventually disappeared into the shadows of the dense pine. I stopped, realizing the futility of chasing him further into the woods. I could feel the menace lingering, thick and invisible, even after the prints faded. Weeks passed. The tapping at the windows persisted. My parents returned, reinforced the house with additional locks, security cameras, motion sensors, everything, but nothing deterred him. He never attempted to enter while the house was fully occupied, but the feeling of being watched never left me. One night, I woke to the sound of crunching in the snow again. I crept to the second-floor deck, shotgun in hand, fog lights illuminating the backyard. And there he was. Same man, same knife, same horrifying smile, wide, unblinking eyes. He stood there, less than 10 feet away, staring straight at me. I shouted, "Leave now, or I'll shoot." He didn't flinch. I fired a warning shot into the air. He staggered slightly, but did not run. The Rottweiler, sensing the danger, bolted from the house. He chased the man into the forest, barking and snarling. After that night, I never saw him again, but the sense of vulnerability never left me. Every shadow beyond the window, every tapping at night, brought me back to that frozen terror. I had survived, yes, but something had changed. I knew that isolation, no matter how safe it seemed, could conceal a predator, patient and silent, waiting for the perfect moment. I never forgot the eyes. That unblinking stare, the wide smile, and the sense that he had studied me, learned my habits, and had intended to be inside my home. For weeks afterward, even with the dog at my side and the gun within reach, I felt exposed, watched. I had lived through the kind of horror most people only read about, and yet I had no answers. The man had vanished into the woods, leaving only footprints, tapping, and a lingering terror that no amount of light could erase. Even now, years later, I can close my eyes and see him. The smile, the knife, the deliberate tapping against the glass. And I still remember, vividly, the paralyzing realization that someone had been in my home while I was alone, unseen but intent on harm, a predator who had patiently stalked me and could have struck at any moment. That house, once a dream, became a symbol of how fragile safety can be, how easily normalcy can be shattered, and how isolation, even in the middle of paradise, can become a hunting ground for something dark and patient. This happened a couple of years ago, right before school ended. It was the last day of 8th grade, the kind of day you'd expect. Excitement, bittersweet goodbyes, chaos everywhere. Everyone was running around, scribbling signatures and cheesy messages in each other's yearbooks. My middle school was huge, easily over 1,000 students. To manage the chaos, teachers collected yearbooks and passed them around classrooms. Anyone could write anything in anyone else's book. The teachers tried to control it, but a few kids always found ways to be cruel. At the end of the day, I flipped through my yearbook eagerly. There were the usual goofy messages, some from close friends, others from kids I barely knew. But one note made me freeze. It was a signature below the photo of someone I had never seen before. Samuel Robinson III, it read. And underneath, a message. Hags, I'll be seeing you again. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know this kid. I'd never spoken to him. I stared at the page for a while, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a prank, a mistake, but the tone, it was deliberate, personal. I shoved it out of my mind. The school year was over. There was nothing I could do. That evening, I had a sleepover in my basement with my best friends, Kevin, David, and Kieran. We ate Doritos, played Call of Duty, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. My parents were 3 floors above us, so we had free reign. Around 2 a.m., as I was messing with my dad's rowing machine, there was a sharp knock at the storm door. The sound froze me. Who knocks at a storm door this late? It kept knocking in a rhythmic pattern, like it was deliberately loud, deliberate, patient. Kieran, oblivious to the tension, called out, "Who's there?" I wanted to hit him. That voice broadcasted to whoever was outside that we were down here. A muffled, cheerful-sounding voice answered. "Come around to the back door." It was high-pitched, almost friendly. Teenaged. Genuine. Not pretending. I was scared, but my friends insisted I check it out. Reluctantly, I crept upstairs. Through the narrow glass by the door, I saw a shadow under the dim porch light. As I drew closer, my stomach dropped. It was him, Samuel Robinson III. My friends wanted to open the door. I refused. I told them who it was and explained the yearbook message. Their excitement faded, replaced with unease. Sam was still outside, motioning for me to come to the window. I cracked open the kitchen window, just slightly. "Oh, so you got my message," he said, introducing himself as Sam. He went on to explain that he had been watching me from afar and that we could have been good friends. I agreed cautiously, just to avoid angering him. Then I asked the only logical question. "How do you know where I live?" No answer. David, frustrated, called him a creepy stalker. Sam's smile disappeared. It twisted into something ugly. Hatred. He screamed, spitting words about my friends, my family, things only someone watching me would know. He tried to force the window open. I slammed it shut, locking it. He snarled, pounding on the glass like a trapped animal. Seconds from shattering it, my parents came barreling down the stairs. Sam bolted before they reached the door. The next day, the school confirmed something disturbing. Sam had been expelled weeks earlier. His yearbook photo was a remnant, yet he had snuck in to leave that message. How he knew my address? Still a mystery. I never saw him again, but the fear lingered. Every shadow, every knock at the door, triggered the memory. Fast forward to high school. My friend Garrett, unhinged, aggressive, unpredictable, was the source of the next nightmare. It was the last day of senior year, May 2019. Graduation was a few days away, but the school had this tradition: gather at the clock tower courtyard to drink, party, and celebrate being done. Over 1,000 people were packed into the courtyard. Garrett thrived in chaos. I tried to keep pace, but stay out of trouble. After the courtyard, we walked home. A homeless man approached, ranting, obviously high. We avoided him, except Garrett, who shouted back, The man charged. Garrett lunged. I pulled him back. The man bolted. Garrett laughed. We thought it was over. But a few blocks from my house, I noticed the back gate was wide open, tied previously with a thin strand of twine. I knew instantly someone had opened it deliberately. Before I could react, a rope was around my throat. Panic, flailing, choking. I swung my legs backward, throwing the attacker off. He hit the ground. Blood streamed down my face. Somehow, I scrambled free. He fled. No trace. Weeks later, hospital visits, shots, police reports, nothing came of it. No suspect, no evidence. Only fear remained. Years earlier, in middle school, there was Sven. 7th grade. Homeroom. Back corner of every classroom. Oversized hoodie, cargo shorts. Quiet. Strange. Alone. The last day of school was chaotic. Classes mixed, students roaming, messing with teachers. I ended up in a room with Sven. He was more agitated than usual, constantly scanning the room, tapping his foot aggressively. Teachers whispered. Students left. The fire alarm went off. Evacuations. Police arrived. Chaos. Rumor. Kids from outside the school had tried to set the building on fire. Tools found. Suspicious activity. Sven? He led them in. I never saw him again. The pattern is clear. Samuel Robinson III, expelled, stalking. Garrett, aggressive, unrestrained. Sven, orchestrating chaos. All began small, almost invisible, but escalated. All left marks, in memory, in fear, in trauma. Even now, years later, shadows trigger memory. Every knock, every fleeting movement outside the window, every unknown presence behind me at night recalls the fear that never left. And I can't help but wonder how many others like them are out there, waiting, watching, planning?